In today's video, we're going to create beautiful isometric illustrations in Figma. Over the last several years, I have shared my isometric illustrations on Dribbble, which have gotten hundreds of thousands of views and led to thousands of dollars in client projects. And if you follow along, by the end of this video, you're going to know how to create something like this. So let's open up Figma, lock in, and let's dive in. So in today's video, we're going to be creating this isometric illustration that I created here. And it looks pretty detailed and complex, but I assure you it's easier than you think. The first thing you're going to need to do is download the Isometric plugin. So if you right click and you go to plugins, I have this one here, Fast Isometric. If you don't, you just go to manage plugins and you can search for it. Fast Isometric, it'll appear and then you can add it. Once you open up the Isometric plugin, it'll look like this. And this one's actually really cool. I've been using an older version, but this new one is really sweet because you can just import shapes. So I can just create this cylinder shape here and I can import it, which is pretty amazing. And you can also select color palettes. So I can change the color to like a gray, black version, and it's pretty sweet. But we're gonna start with this shape over here, which is kind of like the app tile that I have. And then I'm just gonna put it off to the side. For now, I'll just close it. And if you wanna reopen a plugin that you just closed, you just click Option Command P on Mac, and that'll reopen the last plugin that you ran. So we have our shape here, and we're gonna start by building this out. So I'm just gonna copy the artboard here, going to delete this, and let's just make it, we'll keep it this dark color, which is 131417, if you want to have the exact color code there. And with this shape, what we're going to do is ungroup it. Right now this one is built out of multiple different pieces and we just want it to be one. So let's just flatten this, and I'm going to make it a little bit lighter just so you can see what I'm doing here. I'm going to make this a bit lighter, and now make sure that you do Command E to actually flatten it. And sometimes Figma does this where it has like a little line or something broken in there. You just gotta delete it and then click B to fill it back in. So now that we did that, let's decrease the size, the height here. So I'm just gonna click Shift and the arrow key up to skip by 10 pixels until it feels right. So this looks pretty decent. Maybe I'll make it a tad bit thinner since we want it to look kind of like a, I don't know, app tile slash phone. And we're going to start by building kind of this base area right here. And the reason why this looks so nice and shiny and metallic is because I used these blur shapes, and that's all it really is. Once you understand shadows, light, where the light kind of comes from and how it spreads out around objects, you can almost create anything in Figma. So let's start by adding another layer here. I'm just gonna copy and paste, and then I'm gonna make this red so I can see what I'm doing. I'm gonna scale it down slightly, and then we're gonna have to adjust the corner radius here. And it might be a little bit difficult to look at with red, but I'm basically just looking at the corners to make sure that they're consistent distance away from the corner consistently across. So if you can see on the right here, it looks pretty consistent. Down here and at the top, it doesn't. So I'm just gonna put that little piece there and then add, I'm just gonna select this top and bottom piece because I just want to round those. And I'm just gonna round it a bit. And it doesn't have to be like a perfect science to it. It's somewhat visual, and you see it now when I look at this, I know I kind of over rounded it just because there's a bigger gap now. So I'm gonna pull that back just slightly. So I think like 22 pixels is good here. And now I just wanna make these, this kind of ports at the bottom here, which is basically a rounded rectangle and then 3 circles. So let's run the same plugin again, and I want to draw a shape here. And I just click which of these I want it to skew to, and it does it, which is pretty sweet. And I would just like to leave a copy of the vector down here somewhere so I can pull it later, because if I flatten this, I can no longer resize it on the isometric kind of plane. So you always want to make a copy that you can pull from later on. And now let's just decrease this to make a rectangle. And I'm going to click Shift H to horizontally flip it. So now I'm just going to scale this down a bit until we have a shape that looks kind of like that. All right, this is looking good. Now I'm just going to make it dark. And what I'm going to do to have that kind of inset look is place another shape. So let's just make this a little bit lighter. So I want to make it look like it's going, it has depth inside there. So I'm going to copy this shape, copy paste, and then I'm going to do let's intersect the selection. So now it looks like it has kind of a rounding there. Actually, the better way to do that is to click Control Command M, which will mask it. So now we can kind of move it around and place it so that it looks better. And I think I'm gonna actually scale it down slightly and just kind of put it back there. And now what we want to do is just kind of get the colors to look right. I'm going to change it to a bluish tone, a blue tone gray, and I'm just gonna find a color that works for me. And you want to see it kind of in reference of the background as well. So let's do a color like this, and then the inside piece, we're gonna just copy the background color, make it a little bit lighter. And then this inside piece is going to be the darkest because it's inside of there. And now what I'm going to do is just rebuild this, but in a circle format. So I'm going to draw my circle shape. I'm going to do the isometric. And you can just do this one here so that it automatically places it facing this way, which we need. And we're going to do a similar process here. We're going to just make this lighter color. We're going to copy the shape again, as we did previously. Copy and paste. And then we're going to select all three of these shapes and click Control Command M. And now I'm just going to copy that speaker hole over here until we have three of them. And just eyeball the alignment a little bit. I'm just going to scale all of this down slightly. And there we have that. Now what I'm going to do is add some of the blurs to kind of bring this thing to life and make it look like it has a reflective metallic edge. So I'm going to make this a bit lighter because the light hits from the top over here. With these kind of illustrations, you have to understand where the light comes from to make it look realistic. However, because it is an isometric illustration, it doesn't have to be perfect, just believable. So now we have this bottom piece and we're going to draw a rectangle here. We're going to go to the effects panel and we're going to blur this out. Layer blur. Now I'm going to make a copy of this, copy paste, and we're going to select all three of the shapes again and click Shift M. And now we have that nice blur and it looks like it's kind of accenting on the curve we have there. So I'm just going to play with the color till it looks right. And I just want to make sure this top piece up here stands out against that shadow or that blur. So now let's copy this over to the edge here. So we want to have it from this side because it's, you know, the light hits from the corners, and we'll put one over here, but we're going to put a less bright one on this corner here. And I'm just going to adjust the colors a bit. Now we're going to do the same thing for these down here. I'm just going to make sure that these are center aligned here, which I think they are. Alrighty, so how do we make this look realistic? Well, we're going to do a similar process of adding the blur. So let's just draw a shape like this. And we're going to make it lighter and do the same thing. We're going to go to effects panel, layer blur, and blur it out. And we want it to be on this corner because that's where the light would hit when it would kind of wrap upward. And to really make this look realistic, what we want to do is add a stroke to this. So I just copied and pasted the element, and the stroke, what it does is kind of adds like a little bit of a edge to it. And I'm going to place it on top of everything. And then I'm going to change the thickness of the stroke to 0.2 and add a linear gradient to it. On the top of this, because it's kind of at the bottom, we don't really need to have it showing as much. So I would just make it slightly visible here up top. However, here is where the light would hit, so we want it to be a bit brighter and more visible. So I'm going to make it a little bit lighter, and we can even make it a little bit thicker. 0.2 is a little too small. Let's do 0.5. Maybe let's change it to 0.3. And we're essentially just going to do the same thing with these other three ports right here. So I'm going to copy and paste this blur. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller since it's a circle. And then maybe we decrease the blur amount so that it shines a little bit more. And let's copy and paste this object. We're gonna convert it to a stroke, place it at the top here. And then I'm just gonna do Option Command C, Option Command V, which will copy and paste the styles to the circle. And then we're just gonna play with the direction of the gradient here. And now let's just copy this over to where these were, since we already created one. 1, 2, 3. And I wanna make sure that it's on the same line, or else it'll look kind of misaligned. So I'm just gonna take one of the isometric shapes and use it as a ruler. Let's just get it above everything else. We're just gonna run this line across, and now I can see where these circles are placed and where they need to be. Alrighty, so now that we aligned that, one thing I want to explore is adding a little bit more shadow in here, just so it's not like a sharp cut, but has a bit more depth. So I'm going to copy this that we've created here, and I'm going to make it dark, and we're going to put it around the corners here. And let's just increase the blur there, and let's copy it again so that we can place it at the top here. Now that looks a lot more realistic than just kind of the same color going across with a slight blur. And I'm going to do the same thing for these, and just make sure it kind of goes on the corners to give it that metallic look. Now I can just copy these and paste it in here. Sweet. I think I actually want to copy these over here. Now we're going to focus on the top area here. So we have the Apple kind of icon coming out here from the top, and another plugin that I love to use is called Brand Fetch. So you add it the same way I showed you to add the other plugin. It basically allows you to search different brands and install their logos, or just kind of copy them over, which is really sweet. So let's do that. And a lot of these companies have their brands on here, their logos, and they're in SVG, which is really awesome. And we're gonna select, we're gonna open the Fast Isometric plugin. We're gonna select this Apple, and we're gonna put it on the angle. And then I wanna make this a little bit of a dark color, but not so dark that you won't see anything on it. And let's put the Apple there. Make it match the background color here. And now we're gonna click Effects, Inner Shadow, and increase the inner shadow so you can kind of see it there. And just kind of visually align it to the center. And now I'm gonna copy and paste, and we're going to lift it up. And this is gonna be our gradient, colorful looking one. So let's pick a vibrant, kind of bright color that we can see, and then let's copy and paste it down here. We'll make it a little bit darker. And to make this look like it's one piece, what you have to do is go to edit mode, and then just make sure you reach kind of the most outside corner, and then just connect these lines. There's really no magic to the isometric illustration work. It's all about just going through these steps and following, connecting things and making sure everything's on the proper plane and geometric. I want to add, you see how we have this little glow below the Apple, making it look like it's popping more. I want to add that here. So I'm just going to draw a circle. And once we have our circle here, we're going to open up our plugin again. Let's put it on an angle. We're going to copy it around. Let's make this a bit of a lighter color. Going kind of in this purple hue here. And I want to make a copy of this layer here. Let's grab these, and we're going to select that layer, and we're going to mask these. And we're going to blur these out. So let's click Effects, Layer Blur, and increase the layer blur. Now just make sure that this is layered properly. And it's a little bit strong right now, so let's just decrease the opacity just so it's pretty light there. Alrighty, so now I want to add this kind of metallic effect to the top like we have on the sides. And to do that, we just want to select this object here, and we're going to draw a few shapes like this. These are going to be our highlights. Let's copy 1, 2. Let's do maybe one over here. Now I'm going to duplicate this layer so that I have two of them. One of them is going to be my mask, the one at the bottom here. And I'm going to select all of these. We're going to click Control-Command-M again to mask. And we just have to put it back below these layers. Let's select all three of these shapes together. We're going to flatten them with Command-E. Make them white. Go to Layer Blur and blur them out. And we can play with the opacity to make sure they're not too strong. But you can see how that adds that little metallic effect to it, to the top there. And what we can actually do is this layer here, it should technically reflect on that metal as well. So we can scale it up a little bit more. Or what we can do actually, since it's not very visible, is just copy these over on this layer, which I'm trying to locate right here, so that this has a little bit of a glow also. So I'm just gonna make it pretty light, but make it so that we can see it. Just to give it a little bit of color. Alrighty, so now for the apple here. The way I got this kind of glowing effect with all these awesome looking colors is the same way we just did that up there. You just draw your shape and then we pick colors. Some nice bright colors here that can work well together. And let's add one more here. So some warm colors, some cool colors, just a good mix of both. And then let's copy the Apple logo and we're gonna mask them in here. And now let's apply the blur effect. And now here I'm just gonna kind of mess around with it until it looks good. You never know with the colors how the combination will come out, but I like the way this is coming together. So it's coming together here with the colors. Let's just do some final tweaks. All right, now we're gonna basically copy this layer to the bottom piece here so that we can have the same effect down there. So we have this shape here. Let's mask it. Place it below. And then I'm just gonna scale it up. And to make it look a little bit darker, because on the edges, we want it to be a little bit darker, we're gonna change the background here from a bright pink to like a darker color. And we can actually go through here and also just make these colors darker that are on the actual, on that bottom layer. And I don't name my layers, which sometimes admittedly causes a problem of digging through layers, but you nobody got time for that, especially with illustrations and hundreds of layers. So that looks a little bit dark, but a little trick I like to do, if I've built something out and it's looking dark, I can copy paste it and I can go to appearance and I just play with the blending modes to kind of lighten it up. So I found color dodge that looks kind of cool, and I just lower the opacity of it so it doesn't take over. Some final touches and tweaks and we'll be done with this. Let's copy paste this object again. We're gonna send it to the front. We're gonna convert it to a stroke and we're gonna make it thin, 0.4. We're gonna add a gradient here to the stroke. So we want it to be bright over here and not so bright in the back there. Just fade it out completely back there and then bright here. And let's make that like 30 opacity. And we can do the same thing for this down here. It's actually better just to copy the base shape here. So let's copy the mask and we're gonna unmask it. Just need to go through and fix some of these lines because you can see where I connected them vertically. So let's do 0.5. All right. That looks very big, 0.4. And let's add the gradient here as well. All right, we're getting fairly close. I think that is more or less similar to that version that I have here. This is essentially how you create this illustration. And actually, one more thing I want to add here is this little glow that happens. So let's just take a color, drop in that mask there, and let's blur it out and then drop the opacity. So for this color, I just use kind of a bit darker gray. And I don't know if you can tell on the screen share, but here I'm using like this overlay, just gives it a little bit more texture. And there's a plugin for this. However, it does require payment or subscription. So it's $5 to buy, I guess. You can do that if you want, or you can just export it into Photoshop and add that effect. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed that tutorial. Now you should be equipped with everything you need to create amazing isometric illustrations. The only limit is your creativity and what you do with it. If you enjoyed that video and these tutorials, please consider dropping a like, subscribing. Let me know down below in the comments what kind of tutorials you want to see next, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.